Bible has it in the back, the Confession of Faith, or maybe you could find it on your phone. The 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. We're only going to read the first couple of chapters. I'm going to read. So the chapter I'm going to read is God's Divine Providence. I don't know what number it is. Hold on, let me see if there's a number. Well, I'm going to read chapter 1. Hold on. Let me look it up myself.
What are you reading?
So I'm reading out of the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. 1689, or London Baptist Confession of Faith. And I'm reading, let me see what chapter it is. Hold on. Because I have it printed here. Just to be answered this. Is it 5? Oh, ya me pasé. Okay, chapter 5. Yes, of Divine Providence. I'm going to read the first couple of chapters, and then we're going to get into the verses. Paragraph 1 states, God, the good creator of all things, in his infinite power and wisdom, does uphold, direct, dispose, and govern all creatures and things, from the greatest even to the least, by his most wise and holy providence, to the end. Hebrews 1:3. Hebrews 1:3. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. The word of his power. Hebrews 1, chapter 1, verse 3. Okay. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. I'm going to read from the beginning of number 1. God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things. Through him also he made the world, who, being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. So I'm going to stop there. So, Hebrews 1 thing, all things, if you notice, all things are upheld by the word of his power. He made it, he upholds it. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Let's go to Job 38. Job 38. And this is where God really kind of makes it very clear to Job and to us who's in control. Job chapter 38. The Confession of Faith references 38:11, but I want to read from 1 through 18 on the chapter. Chapter 38, 1 through 18. Chapter 38 in Job. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? God is talking to Job, of course. Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding, who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors, when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band? When I fixed my limit for it, and set bars and doors? When I said, this far you may come, but no farther, and here your proud waves must stop. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It takes on form like clay under a seal, and stands out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and the upraised arm is broken. 16. Have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. God's making it very clear to Job. No matter how successful Job was, if you know the story, Job was very successful, the most successful person probably of the Old Testament after Solomon. And he was telling me he didn't know anything about anything. Right? That God was in control. God was in control of the creation. Job wasn't there. As much as he thought he knew, his knowledge was incredibly limited. So let's go to the next verse to prove further that God is in control. Isaiah 46.
Guys, they make a point as you go to the 46, Isaiah, when we'll ask the pastor corrected me and said that it's Athanasius that says contra mundus, because he said that what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? That everything that we have comes first from God, and then there's variations of it. If you read this and you know Greek philosophy, what we just read here, you see Hades and coming out of the cave of the bottom of the sea. When you read Job, you know?
Yeah.
You see where they get this from. So this is like 800 years before the Greeks ever started. See, this is why he said, what does Jerusalem have to do with Athens?
Right.
Jerusalem comes. God comes to us and reveals everything to us way before.
And in other places he says, can you loosen the belt of Orion?
Huh?
In other places he tells Job, can he loosen the belt of Orion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we think that the Greeks are the one that documented it.
Right.
No. What does Athens have to do with Jerusalem?
Sure.
You know, God reveals everything first.
He sure does. Isaiah chapter 46, we're in number 10 to 11. 10 states, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I have spoken it. He continues, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. In 12 and 13, he says, listen to me, you stubborn-hearted who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness near. It shall not be far off. My salvation shall not linger, and I will place salvation in Zion, for Israel is my glory. Again, God proven over and over that he is in control. Let's skip a few verses and let's go to the next paragraph. So that was paragraph 1. We're going to read paragraph 2 to continue understanding how much God's in control. Paragraph 2 of the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith, or in chapter 5, paragraph 2 says, although in relation to the foreknowledge and decree of God, the first cause, all things come to pass immutably and infallibly, so that there is not anything that befalls by any chance or without his providence. I like what R.C. Sproul says about chance. He has a few sermons on chance. He said, one of the things R.C. Sproul said, the universe could not have come into existence by chance because chance does not have the power to do anything. And he goes on and on to describe his conversation with a Harvard professor and how chance might work in mathematics, but it doesn't work in reality. And it continues, yet by the same providence, he ordered them to fall out according to the nature of second causes, either necessarily, freely, or contingently. Let's go to Proverbs 16:33. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 33. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 33, it's short. It says, the lot is cast into the lap. Right? Ever flip a coin and you get a result? It's the same idea. The lot is cast into the lap. But it's every decision is from the Lord.
Yes.
God controls all things. Even when you think it's by chance or happenstance or men getting involved to try to change the outcome. The Lord already knows the outcome.
Like the probabilities and things
Like the probabilities, yes.
like from God too.
Yeah, the article I was reading about Sproul and the chance about flipping, he talks about flipping a coin, and it all depends on the wind, on the resistance, the weight of the coin, how much energy you exerted to flip the coin, whether you flip the coin when it lands, when you turn it over. That all
Yeah.
has, it all depends on the degree of whether it falls on heads or tails. But, God doesn't leave anything to chance. There is no chance when it comes to God. He's fully in control,
We were talking
fully
earlier
understands. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
about the luck,
Yeah. Everything from the Lord.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's in control.
Interesting.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. So,
Also, when we see here, when you see lap, thigh, touch my thigh, for the blessing and things, this is a very male-oriented, blessed to see the priest would touch the man's privates and bless him. The meaning here, flip it on the lap, it's not to the fortitude of men that has the male parts and impregnates a woman. It's not the fortitude of men that decides things, but God.
right, not the will of man, right?
Yeah,
Right.
see, that's why it mentions the lap. Have you ever thrown lots into, or what do you call it, the little
Dice,
gambling
like
dice
dice or something.
into your lap? No, you throw them on the floor. But it's telling you, it's not man's fortitude. It's the Lord.
I'm reading a book by Neil Postman. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. It refers, in this book by Postman, he refers to the technology. It was written in the 80s, so for all you 80s kids, right? It's from that perspective. But it applies to today. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. He refers to the technology that's gripped society, and he refers to it as the Huxleyan world of technological narcotics, right? And Huxleyan means he's referring to A Brave New World that was written by Huxley in the 50s. And in that book, Huxley's book, he refers to, he foresees a society, he wrote in the 50s, he foresees a society that would have easy access, a lot of technology, a lot of mind-altering drugs available, easy access to sex and all these horrible things. So Postman kind of grabs that term and said we're living in a Huxleyan world of technological narcotics. So it was written mostly as a response to the American obsession with television back then. It applies to what we're experiencing today. He takes a critical view of, I'll just take a piece of the book, of traditional nightly news, right? How it's delivered, and even to the why it's delivered, right? The traditional news hour, if you think of it, it's a disjointed collection of different happenings. None of them are connected. It's all disjointed. They're quick, just to grab your attention. They're mostly tragic, right? They're delivered in a sporadic, quick fashion, very quick by good-looking, well-spoken, well-dressed individuals to grab your attention. if you're not a Christian and you don't know that God is in control of all things, watching the nightly news might give you the sense that the world is completely out of control, with zero cohesion, and that God is nowhere to be found, or if there is a God, he either doesn't care or is not paying attention. And I think this sort of daily catastrophic information that's not just delivered by TV, but it's now in our hands, it's what's leading a lot of people to have a lot of anxiety. Just last week, I was cut off, but not cut off, I was cut off. I really wanted to get my attention. I don't know, I must have gotten in his way or something. I left him over there and I stood back here. I wasn't going to get involved. There's a lot of anxiety out there. So, similar to what the deists believe, who came out of the Enlightenment period, this is what they believe. And many of our founding fathers, like Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was an atheist, but he was also he was mentored by Ben Franklin. They believed that God created the world and then took his hands off the proverbial wheel, and then it's up to man to use reason to figure out the issues of the world. If we look at the Word, we know this is not true. God's in control of all things, big and small, as we just saw. Right? So many people today will self-describe as spiritual or believing in a higher power. It's your modern day deists. They just don't know it. They have no relationship. They know this. They have no relationship with God, but believe he exists. You've heard terms like higher power, or I'm spiritual, or I'm very spiritual, like I heard recently a celebrity say. I don't know what very means, but she's very spiritual. So unbelievers, if you think of it, they're doomed to live their lives with a sense of helplessness, surrounded by anarchy. They want the same things we do: true peace, safety, lasting prosperity. They're unattainable, particularly for those who subscribe to atheistic and evolutionary beliefs, because they have no hope, right? These worldviews teach us that events are random, our origins are accidental, or by some random chance, our lives meaningless, and tragedy inevitable for the unlucky ones. Oh, something happened to well, too bad for them. They were unlucky. These worldviews were created to offer an alternative to God and a path to peace, happiness, contentment. The Apostle Paul learned the secret content in whatever circumstances I am in. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity in any and every circumstance. I have learned the secret. Philippians 4:11-12. If you remember, the Philippian church, they've been a major supporter of Paul's missionary since his first visit to Philippi. They were like his, what would you call it? Like his sponsors almost, right? They almost sponsored him. They were continuously giving to his ministry. And then one day it stopped. It paused. And he wrote to them. He's like, I appreciate you how you've helped me, but if you can't, I understand that too, because I've learned to live in poverty, and I've learned to live with much and without. He understood that God was the person in charge of the end result of his life. Not a circumstance, not a situation, not whether a challenge. He doesn't even talk about that, and he had a lot of challenges. But in every situation, he was content in knowing that God was in charge of the outcome. He was in charge of the end result, right? Not us. Now, we do the work. There's a mystery there. We still have to do the work. Paul still had to go out. He still had to work, and they kick him out of the city. He still had to go back and preach again, because that was his job. He still had to go up. And him knowing this might not end well, but God's in control. God is in control of the outcome. God is in control of the results. We put in the effort, and God puts in the results and the outcome.
And that passage shows tremendous faith and peace of mind too.
Yes.
Peace of mind and faith. That's what it shows.
Peace of mind. That's the ticket.
And joy. Real joy too.
Real joy. We're going to talk about
That's what
that.
it showed.
In Thessalonians, yes. That's where this all leads to. Yeah, it's joy. You stole my thunder. All right, Paul and his traveling companions, they met a businesswoman named Lydia and preached the gospel to her and her companions. Their conversion resulted in the formation of a church. During the early days of that church, Paul cast out a spirit of divination from a slave girl. The girl's owners, very upset. They lose the income from her fortune-telling abilities. Paul, they have him, if you remember the story, after 3 days, he's, all right, little girl, you bug, I've had enough. He casts the spirit out of her, and she loses her fortune-telling abilities, and she loses her income, right? Because that's how they were making money. Paul was flogged, thrown into prison, and locked in stocks. You know, this is not Club Fed that you have here. This is a real jail in the dirt, locked up. Instead of complaining about the miserable situation in which he found himself, he praises God through thankful prayer and song far into the night. Think about that for a second. If you were to be thrown in jail right now, police come in, throw us, if the police would come in, lock us all up, throw us in jail, how many of us would be singing in thankful prayer long into the night? Right? But God responds in an amazing way. He shook the foundation of the prison so violently. All its doors swing open, and the chains fall off the prisoner's feet and wrists. Right? So it was an incredible experience, plus Paul's response to those circumstances, right? That leads to the salvation of the jailer and the jailer's entire household. So, as the church grows in Philippi, it's, obviously they helped fund Paul for further missionary outreach. They saw incredible things happen in that church, and they believed wholeheartedly. Now, in Philippians 4:10, let's go to Philippians 4:10. Philippians 4:10. Right after Ephesians, Philippians 4:10. Okay. Philippians 4:10. But I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again. Though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity to send the aid, right? Their support had dried up. But now they were able to give again, and he was giving them thanks for it. Right? It had been a while since they were last able to support him in his work, but that was okay with Paul, right? He knew it wasn't that they didn't care. They simply, like he says, they lacked the opportunity, right? Or a window of opportunity, or the ability, maybe poverty, or time, or something. Things didn't move that quickly back then. When he writes, you have revived your concern for me, Paul was using a term that, almost like a agricultural term, like to bloom. You were able to bloom again. That's like saying your love for me has given mangoes, has given fruit, right? I know it's always been there, he says, but it just didn't have an opportunity to bloom. And, but Paul understands, blooms are seasonal, they happen, right? You don't always get mango from the mango tree. So the right season just had to come along at the right time. So the point is that Paul had a patient confidence in God's providence. he was content to do with and content to do without. But he was content to wait on the Lord's timing. He could have freaked out and said, "Damn, how am I going to eat? How am I going to pay the rent wherever he was staying? How is he going to survive without his sponsors providing the money that he was relying on?" Right? Because he was getting this support continuously. But he doesn't panic. He doesn't manipulate the outcome or manipulate others. Those things they're never called for, even no matter how desperate we are. But Paul, he was certain that God was going to come through in those circumstances and that his needs would be met. Maybe not his wants, but his needs. And we could also have that certainty today, that our needs are going to be met, that God will provide what we need. Right? So, Paul saw God's providence and his purpose in every situation, no matter how difficult it was. His imprisonment, if you think about it, when he went to prison, he was still spreading the gospel to the jailer. Because the shackles come off, the jailer says, "Oh, I'm done." He goes, "No. And he converts him, his whole family. He's so excited, his whole family converts. So that negative, horrible situation of being shackled, jailed, for doing the right thing, which was spreading the gospel, he could have easily said, "God, where are you? Why am I in jail? I'm doing your work. What am I doing here?" But he didn't. Yeah, it's part of it.
Same like Joseph.
Same as Joseph. Yeah, I was thinking of Joseph too. Yeah, same as Joseph. He could have been depressed, could have been sad, And if you look at the story of Joseph,
The end.
well, when he's in jail, he goes to the baker and I'm sorry, I forgot the story of the other guy. He goes to them and he asks them why they're sad. If you remember, he asked them why they're sad one day. Read the story of Joseph. He's in jail.
Right.
He's like, "Hey man, why are you so sad?" Dude, we're in jail. But he had confidence that God was in charge of the outcome. He was in charge of the outcome. Right? And so we should be. So suffering was an opportunity. I mean, that's just the way God has it, but sometimes suffering is an opportunity to fellowship with Christ. God uses our suffering to get him closer to him. Even Paul, in Philippians 3:10, he says, even death represented gain because he would depart and be with Christ. He's like, "Okay, kill me. I will be with Christ. No problem." So, to Paul, there was nothing in this world that held any real value compared to the surpassing value of knowing Jesus Christ. Philippians 3:8. Nothing. There was nothing of value. And for that reason, he was able to live through the sunshine, through the storms, yet he was very, very content. Now, what he didn't do, which you might hear today, he didn't have what's the term, let go and let God. You let go of the wheel, you're going to crash. "Oh, I'm going to let go of the wheel, I'm driving, and God's going to drive." No, we have our role. But within our role, God uses us for his outcomes. If the farmer stays on the porch in the rocking chair all day, there's no corn that's going to be had, right? He can pray, he can give, he can hold, but if he doesn't drop the seed and work the field, nothing's going to happen.
Doesn't do what he's called to do.
Right, what he's called to do, correct. That's perfectly the way to say it. We're called to do, and God's called to be in charge of the outcome, of the results. Let's read Matthew 10. Matthew 10:1. Matthew 10:1. I'm going to read from 1 to about 4, and then we're going to jump. So Matthew 10:1. And when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. First Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip, and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Lebbaeus, and whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. If you go back and read it, the beginning, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out and heal all kinds of sickness. And who was in there? Judas. So don't be swayed by people that can do all sorts of miraculous signs if they don't have the true God and the true Word. So I'm going to jump from there. I want to go. All right, let's read one more paragraph. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Provide neither gold nor silver nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staffs. For a worker is worthy of his food, or some other translations have, worthy of his pay. If you go now to verse 27. So we're looking at 10, verse 27. Whatever I tell you in the dark, speak in the light, and what you hear in the ear, preach on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Remember, he's sending them out to do miraculous things, but they're still going to be attacked. They've got the power to heal. They've got the power to, cast out demons. But notice he's not saying to attack anybody. He said, you're going to be attacked. He's not saying to attack anybody. You will be attacked. But rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And here's the key. Verse 29, are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will? But the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are more valuable than many sparrows. Something, I don't think anybody's ever counted the hairs on their head. It's just showing you how
In control.
in control in the minutia, right? The little things that God's in control of. He's also in control of mold. Mold. Yeah, let's go to Leviticus 14. And this will be the last verse we look at. Leviticus 14. Leviticus 14, we're going to look at verse 33. 14, verse 33. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give you as a possession, and I put the leprous plague in a house in the land of your possession, and he who owns the house comes and tells the priest, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house. Then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes into it to examine the plague. Now, the New King James has plague, but other versions have mold. For the word plague, they use the word mold. Because you can't examine a plague if a house has it, right? It has to be mold. That all that is in the house may not be made unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in it to examine the house. The house may not be made unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in it to examine the house. And he shall examine the plague, and indeed if the plague is on the walls of the house with ingrained streaks, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, Then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the seventh day and look, and if indeed the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which it is the plague, and they shall cast them into an unclean place outside the city. And he shall cause the house to be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and plaster the house. It continues, but if you think, men were the ones that created Home Depot, they weren't. That was God. God is a carpenter. God is all things. He's a doctor. He's a carpenter. He understands all things, even mold in a house. He said, scrape out the whole thing. Take it all out. And if it returns, well, then it continues. If you read it, you're going to have to knock the house down because it's got a serious problem. But even the minutia that we would think, like mold, God is fully in control, and He has a solution, and He has a solution to all things, and that solution is Christ Jesus. And if we have Christ Jesus, then we have our outcomes are already determined. And this leads to my final point in joy that I'm going to cover on Sunday. This all leads to the joy that Paul talks about in the book of Thessalonians. But I just want you to leave here tonight with knowing that God is in control. And it's not a cliche, as we read in His Word, not a cliche, but God is in control of the big things and even the little things of our lives. As big things as our lives and as little things as mold in our house. God cares about everything that's happening in our lives. Amen. Pastor, you want to do something?